Hey guys, so today we are going to be talking about LF Final Form Cooler. This is the newest Legends Limited character to be added to Dragon Ball Legends. I'm going to give you guys some tips and tricks on his best teams, his best equipment, as well as some different techniques you can use with him in battle to get the most out of this character. I do think this is probably the most dominant character in the entire game right now as me recording this. This video should be releasing on September 25th or 26th of 2022. This guy, again, the newest Legends Limited character, Final Form Cooler. Let's talk about him. So first I want to go over some of his team compositions. There's three teams that I've built for him here. The first team is going to be Lineage of Evil, which is this team right here. Obviously, Cooler is the centerpiece of pretty much every single one of these teams we're going to be looking at because I believe he is the best character in the game right now. So Lineage of Evil is an interesting team because up until this Cooler's release, they were mostly a blast-oriented team where pretty much all the characters on the team wanted to be doing blast damage, right? You had like Golden Frieza, you have Revival Frieza, you have Mecha Frieza, you had First Form LF Frieza. So all these Friezas pretty much are just all centered around blast attacks. So when this Cooler came out and he was a very, very strike-heavy character, it sort of changed the way you wanted to build this team. And so the way that I've designed this team is to basically be of a sort of like a Cooler-centric team where you're just pumping as much damage and support as possible into Cooler and letting him do the work. So the core of the team is going to be obviously LF Cooler. We have the Revival Final Form Frieza, and then we have the LF First Form Frieza, who's they're both going to be providing support for Cooler. The one omission from this team that you guys might be surprised at is the Green Golden Frieza, the Angel Golden Frieza from the Throne of Power, not on the team right now. Again, that is because that Frieza's role is sort of the same as Cooler's. They both want to be the main, point damage dealing character on the team. And it doesn't really work as well when you have multiple of those types of characters on the team. So I opted to remove him and instead put Cooler in the leader slot. The only thing to note about this specific team build is we're getting a lot of blast damage from Z abilities, which is really not what Cooler wants. But I think with all the support we're getting from both the actual support from the Revival Frieza and the First Form Frieza, as well as from the equipment, I think it'll be more than enough to make up for the lack of strike damage Z abilities here. The second team we have here is Sagas from the movies, consisting of a core of LF Final Form Cooler, Super Saiyan 3 Dragon Fist Goku, and Yellow Tapion. A pretty standard bench setup. We have Goku giving HP and strike attack to Cooler, Broly giving defenses, and then Great Saiyaman giving defenses, with the Great Saiyaman giving the Zenkai buff to Cooler, and then Broly giving the Zenkai buff to Dragon Fist Goku. So Tapion is pretty much like this. This is actually a pretty similar setup to the LOE setup that I had, except Tapion is sort of fulfilling the roles of multiple support characters. He's giving so much strike support. He's giving up to, I believe it's like 50% with his main ability popped and with his switch buffs as well. He's also giving strike cards. And of course, he has all the very, very annoying locking abilities. He has the team heal with his main ability. He's drawing green cards from his main ability. So he's able to provide a lot to this team. And I think with Cooler's sniping capabilities alongside Dragon Fist's slow buildup of his gauge, this is probably one of the more deadly teams in the game right now. Cooler, there's not really much else to really say about these team builds other than Cooler is an absolute animal on pretty much all of them. Let's move on to the final team build that I've made here. All right, so the third and final team that I've built here is the Powerful Opponent team. Now, what I've done here is I've sort of made the core of the team a future/android build. And what that allows you to do is that allows you to put Cooler in the leader slot while having an android core, which basically allows you to triple Zenkai buff the team. And what I mean by triple Zenkai buff, I mean more so just all the main three characters on this team are either going to be getting one or multiple Zenkai buffs. So we have Red Rose on the bench, who's buffing Future with the Z ability, so all the characters are getting that. And then he's going to be Zenkai buffing both Cooler and Android 17 and 18. We have the Android 21, who's giving 20% HP to both the androids, and then obviously Cooler from being in the leader slot. She's providing the Zenkai buff to LF Cell. And then we have Android 13, who is giving the double offensive buffs to the androids, and then the Zenkai ability to Android 17 and 18. So 17 and 18 are getting double Zenkai buffed. Cooler and Cell are getting one Zenkai buff each. Alternatively, what you could do is you could potentially remove, I think, Android 21, and you could put on Mai. What that would do is that would give you an extra 5% HP across the board for all three of your main core members. But you would end up not receiving a Zenkai buff for Cell, which I think is probably too important not to have. So that's why I opted for 21. And then in that last slot, instead of Android 13, what you could do is you could replace him with Mai as well to get the extra 25% HP buff. So in total, you'd have 45% HP. I tested that out. I think I like this setup better just because of the extra buffs from the Zenkai abilities and from just the Z abilities that 13 gives. You could also throw on, if you guys have this character at 14 stars, the EX Purple Saiyan Armor Goku. He gives 50% strike attack and defense to red and purple characters. So that would technically be a bigger buff for Cell and Cooler, but I think I prefer this Android 13 just because of the massive Zenkai ability buff to the androids and how good the androids are. So really, really strong red, purple, powerful opponent setup. There is certainly an argument to be made that this is probably the strongest team in the game. But yeah, all three of these teams I think are very, very powerful. And you're really not going to go wrong with picking any of these to grind up PvP with. So next, let's jump into the equipment, some of the equipments that I think are better for this Cooler, and what teams they'd be good on. So when it comes to LF Final Form Cooler, there's a ton of equipment you can use, and that's thanks to him having a ton of tags. But I found that there are some that are just way better than the others. So for instance, this equipment right here, this first unique equipment we're going to be talking about, is for red movies, and it's not really anything too special. Like, you take a look at this and you're like, okay, it's pretty basic, but with the sheer amount of stats this is giving, 10% special move damage, 35% strike defense, 35% strike attack, like, this is a very, very solid equipment you can be using for this character. Not to mention, it's actually a pretty good tool to use against other coolers because of how much strike damage they do. Like, this 35% of strike defense could actually save you in some instances, depending on the situation that you're in. We also have this over here, which is the newest Awakened equipment. This is honestly one of, I think, the best equipment in the entire game. It's giving a lot. It's giving 10% strike, 10% health restoration in slot 1, 15% strike attack, 15% strike defense in slot 2, and then 12% HP in slot 3. This is a very, very good unique equipment, or not unique equipment, Awakened equipment for Cooler. Don't forget, Cooler is healing by 4% whenever he uses a strike card, so this health restoration in the first slot is going to amplify that. It's giving, I guess, up to a maximum of 25% strike attack, HP, and strike defense. Just a very, very solid equipment. There are very few instances where I would say it's probably not worth using this on Cooler. And then we jump down the list a little bit. We have this Awakened equipment right here, this silver Vegeta equipment. Now, this is interesting because this is a fairly old equipment, but the annoying thing about this is it's a slot 1 pure boost, and it's Awakened. So it is very, very hard to roll. But this goes up to 6% to pure strike for each Lineage of Evil battle member in slot 1 there. Then it's giving blast attack and key recovery. So it's a very offensive based equipment, but I actually could see a situation where you might be wanting to run this on LOE team. If you have a good role for this for him, could be a decent option. Then we have this over here, which is specifically for the movies setup. It's giving 6% to pure strike per episode sagas from the movies, 20% to strike defense in slot 2, and then base critical in slot 1. I think the base critical is probably like almost worthless, but not counting that, 6% to pure strike, again, very, very powerful. And I think especially with the way that the meta has shaped up recently, defense is becoming less and less important, as you're pretty much just dead whenever an enemy Cooler gets their hands on you, or honestly, when any top character gets their hands on you, you're most likely just going to die within the combo. So I definitely think going more of an offensive path on this Cooler is the correct decision. So that's a really good equipment for him. We also have this Broly equipment. Actually, it's a pretty decent option as well. This one, I believe, is, just for the sagas from the movies and powerful opponent characters. So basically all the movie boss characters, giving blast defense, strike attack, special move, and ultimate damage. Cooler wants all those things. Pretty self-explanatory right there. And then I think we sort of covered all the better options. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this one. This is definitely one of the better options. I think I use this on pretty much every setup I have for Cooler. Transforming Warrior and melee type or defense type. This is giving blast defense up to 20% in slot 1, strike attack in slots 2 and 3. So pretty much if you have this maxed out, you're getting 37.5% to strike attack from this equipment alone. And it's also giving 12.5% to special move damage as well. This equipment is pretty much just a more offensive variant of this over here, because remember, this is giving 35% to strike attack and then special move up to 10%. Whereas the other one's giving 37.5 strike and 12.5% special move damage, but this has way more strike defense. So that's sort of the small difference between those two right there. Other than that, that's, I call those the better equipments for Cooler. You also have this one, which I don't really see many people talking about. This is a transforming warrior and melee type equipment. It is giving double defenses and 5% to pure strike for each transforming warrior battle member. This is a pretty good one. It's not an awakened equipment. It's not a unique equipment, so it's pretty easy to get, and it's pretty easy to roll, in comparison to the other equipments I talked about. So this might be a good option for people who don't have as many choices available to them in terms of equipment. But even on an end game, high level setup, this could still put in a lot of work. Just 5% to pure strike if you're running like an LoE team or something like that could be really, really nice. So those, I think, are the best equipments for Cooler. I think you want to ultimately go for a more offensive route for him because of the way that the meta has been shaped, and just because of the fact that you pretty much want to use him as a sniper and kill people within the lock that he has with his strike card. So those are the team builds. Those are the equipment. Let's go ahead and talk about techniques to use with him in actual combat. So there's a few things I want to cover when it comes to using LF Final Form Cooler in battle. The first thing to mention about him is that he does end up changing all blast cards to strike cards when he enters the battlefield. And because he has this effect without having special cover change nullification, obviously when he uses his main ability, he gets it. But other than that, he normally does not have access to special cover change nullification. Your opponent, and you, in the case of your opponent using Cooler, know that Cooler is going to be leading off with a strike card. He cannot enter the battlefield and lead off the combo or continue the current combo with a blast card, because he changes all the blast cards to strike cards. So with this in mind, what many people attempt to do when the enemy switches into Cooler is to immediately switch into a character that has special cover change against strike cards, because they know Cooler is going to be continuing the combo with the strike card. The way you can play around this is simply by dropping the combo after switching into Cooler. So you switch into Cooler and your opponent immediately sees that, switches into a character with strike cover change, and then you drop the combo, therefore pretty much killing whoever you're fighting with. And the reason why this is so effective is because this is effectively a gamble your opponent is making, right? If your opponent switches into a strike cover change character, they can end the combo with Cooler and not get locked in and potentially just instantly killed. If they don't switch characters into a strike cover change character, their current character could be killed by Cooler's lock-in, right? So it's kind of a coin flip, right? There's no way to actually tell if your opponent's going to drop or not. So even if they think you're going to drop the combo, most of the time it's still a better decision to switch anyway, just to hedge your bets against your opponent potentially not dropping the combo. So it's kind of like a little bit of a mind game going on here, but this is a very, very powerful tool. If your opponent switches and you drop the combo and you get the combo started with Cooler, as you see in this clip right here against Blue Kaioken Goku, you're just going to kill somebody pretty much guaranteed every single time. So this drop combo upon entry with Cooler is a very powerful tool. The next thing to mention with LF Final Form Cooler is the fact that, as you guys should know at this point, he does add 2 substitution counts to all enemies when he lands a strike card. Once you land the first strike card, you can actually fit in 2 additional strike cards within that 2 timer count duration. I think most people probably know this at this point, but if you're somebody who maybe just pulled Cooler and you maybe don't know the ins and outs of how he works, this could be a very useful piece of information, because as you guys can see in this fight right now, the clip that you're watching, this Tapion, we were able to start a combo on him with Final Form Cooler. We had 3 strike cards in our hands thanks to Cooler switching the blasts in our hands to strikes, and we were able to kill him within the lock because we were able to land those 3 strike cards. The initial strike card being the combo starter, and then once we apply the 2 sub counts, then we finished him off with the remaining 2 strike cards in our hand. So this can be a very strong tool. The one thing to keep in mind about this is you cannot sidestep in between the cards. You cannot charge. You cannot do anything. You want to just press these cards in succession, and you know for a fact they will result in somebody taking massive damage or just straight up dying, like this Tapion did in this clip. This Tapion literally died because of the lock. What is this, 4 counts into the match? That's how powerful this effect is. There's a reason why they limit the amount of locking going on in this game, and this is a very good example of why they do this, because this is one of the most powerful effects in the game. But yeah, remember, keep in mind, you can fit in a total of 2 strike cards once the lock is applied. Once the 2 sub counts are applied, you can fit in 2 strike cards. Just do not sidestep, do not charge, do not interrupt the flow of the natural progression of how the strike card animations will play out. The last thing just to mention about LF Final Form Cooler is not a very common situation, but remember that his ultimate arts card, the Death Glider, does give himself an extra 30% to ultimate damage inflicted for 3 timer counts if the current enemy's remaining health is 50% or below. And the reason why this is significant is because even if the enemy switches characters, if you use the Ultimate Arts card while the current enemy's HP is below 50%, as you can see in this clip right now, I get the Android 17 and 18 below half HP and then use the Ultimate. So even though he's switching into a character that's above 50% HP, right, this Ultra Super Vegeto's at full HP, we're still getting the extra 30% to ultimate damage inflicted because the current character had under 50% HP remaining. So in this situation, I think the extra 30% damage on the ultimate was enough to actually allow us to kill this Super Vegito. So I don't think this is a situation that's going to come up very often, but it is a nice perk that Cooler does have access to on his Ultimate Arts card. Just another another extra 30% damage as if he needs the extra damage, but it is something to keep in mind, right? You can actually pop the ultimate against a character that's under 50% HP just to give yourself a little bit of an extra damage boost if you're confident that the enemy is going to switch into a character that they think is probably going to tank the ultimate, when in reality, maybe the extra 30% gives you enough of an advantage to actually kill that other character, which is exactly what happens in this clip right here. So there we go. Those were some tips that I think could potentially be useful when using LF Final Form Cooler. If you were lucky enough to pull this character, let me know down below how your experience has been both with using him and playing against him. But with that being said, hope you guys did enjoy this video and hopefully you found it useful, and I will see you guys all in the next one.